You're listening to 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York. I'm Bill McIntyre here with Jon Gallo for another edition of this week's Long Island News, the news show that brings you news stories about Long Island and about Long Islanders. We're very happy to be joined today by Town of Hempstead Council member Anthony D'Esposito, who represents the 4th Council District, which covers 3 of the 5 towns: East Rockaway, Island Park, South Hempstead, Oceanside, and Rockville Center. Also sections of Baldwin, Lynbrook, Malvern, and Valley Stream. Councilman D'Esposito was appointed in 2016 and won re-election in 2017 and is now running for a second 4-year term. Well, Councilman Esposito, we thank you for joining us today. How are you?
Happy to be here. I'm great. Thank you. And happy Friday.
Yep, definitely that. I hope everyone's going to have a good start to a long weekend here. We're really glad to have you joining us. We really wanted to start out, like we always do with folks on for the first time, about your role in government and especially in local government during the pandemic. And I know you had a very vital role for Town of Hempstead with their COVID response task force. Mm-hmm. So let's start there. And then obviously we'll go out to thankfully now more the recovery and, obviously there's other things with the vaccination kind of initiatives and stuff like that. But let's start kind of in a recap, I guess, shortly if you can.
Sure. So I guess back in late February, early March of 2020, when COVID-19 became the unfortunate popular thing to hear on the news, and everyone was getting worried, the town of Hempstead kind of took a proactive approach, and Supervisor Clavin put together a COVID-19 task force. And, just from my history and, I've spent most of my adult life in the public safety world. I'm a 21-year member of the Island Park Fire Department. I served as chief from 2009 to 2016. So I was, in addition to being the incident commander on hundreds of emergencies, I was also the incident commander for Tropical Storm Irene and Hurricane Sandy, which, as you guys know, really decimated the South Shore of the town of Hempstead. And in addition, I spent a career in the New York City Police Department, retiring as an NYPD detective. I did my entire career in Brooklyn North and retired out of the 73rd Precinct Detective Squad. So I guess he recognized that I've been through the sort of the gamut of running different emergencies, although this one was very different. And we put together a task force, a diverse group from throughout the town of Hempstead to really begin to monitor what was going on. And I have to say, not because I was part of it, but I think that from the beginning until even today, we are still doing great work based on that task force. And, the town of Hempstead is one of the, at least in the region that I know of, is one of the only towns, and obviously you guys know that the town of Hempstead is the largest town in America. We have close to 800,000 people that live here. We are one of the only towns that actually has a medical director on staff. So we have a emergency room doctor, a physician, Dr. Dave Newbert, who I've known for many years, even before my time on the town board. From his work with the fire service. So having a doctor on our staff was obviously beneficial, not only to all of the residents that we serve, but also to our staff and our coworkers, so that we can continue providing services in the town of Hempstead, even in the face of a worldwide pandemic.
Yeah, no, that is certainly an important, kind of thing to just stop and consider. And knowing, as you just mentioned, your experience with NYPD and also with being the former Island Park fire chief, that certainly is a lot of real world experience that maybe some other legislators might not have had. And we've talked to other folks who maybe come from a medical field and then went into legislatures and stuff like that. But certainly, that I'm sure was invaluable. And, obviously Dr. Dave, and we saw you and obviously the executive Clavin, doing those online kind of briefings and trying to get the public the information, that was very credible versus a lot of that noise that obviously we all were seeing and hearing, which was really kind of leading to even more kind of confusion and, even divisiveness down the road. But that's certainly great to know that is what you brought. And, that is something that certainly manifests even, as we dealt with. I know it wasn't as bad for you guys, I don't think, but, the recent tropical storm Ida and the remnants, I know that stuff. That's what government does. People, think, oh, okay, well, what do they do? But those government responses, making sure that the coordination of all the county services or the town services, kind of really show up and accomplish what's needed by the residents in that moment. So
right.
That's important.
And often what's not seen is that work goes into the incident, whether it is, whether it touches down or not. So, in the South Shore and all across the town of Hempstead, obviously we prepared, we braced ourselves, and we were ready to go into our emergency mode. Thankfully, we didn't have to, but nonetheless, that work and that preparation by not only, the town board, but our great CSEA workforce, it happens whether the storm makes touchdown or not.
Yeah.
Yep. Of course, always better to be more prepared than not.
And we also seem to these days have new issues that we didn't have before. We were talking on some of the previous shows about cars that got stuck in water on roadways where that never happened before. So the storms that we're looking at in the future, they don't seem to be like the trend of old is going. Although some of them, some of the rain that we've gotten even recently. I've never seen so much rain in 1 hour.
Yeah, the rain in the last storm that touched down, and obviously was the North Shore took the biggest hit. Just the volume of rain, and I try to explain. People often say, we need better infrastructure, we need better drainage systems, which in some cases may be true, but I think that we also need to realize that even the best drainage, when you're getting that volume of rain, inches upon inches upon inches in a short amount of time, no drainage system is going to be able to handle that.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's amazing. And the other, I see it I'm on the South Shore. I'm not in the town of Hempstead, but the municipalities seem to be, they had a whole truck crew out for the last couple of weeks, and they're trimming all the trees because now that's the big fear with the water saturating the ground. Some of these giant trees that we have in neighborhoods, people look up at them kind of warily. When is it coming down? So homeowners, especially, trees that are close to the house, and these are real concerns.
But that's, what the constituents voice, and that's why, we see legislators and, county governments know that that's worth the investment on the front end, because otherwise we see what happened like during Tropical Storm Isaias, where now you got all these power outages and now you have, tons of damage that, in theory might have been maybe averted to some extent with a little better planning. So to that point, Councilman, let's talk a little bit more about that. The importance, because, people like to focus on national level and, maybe even, somewhat a state. But obviously how the elections are going on in the county. But before we get to that, just in terms of the importance of town government and what, the town board does, let's just lay that out there a little bit, again, if we can briefly for our listeners. Mm.
Sure. So the town of Hempstead, again, is the largest town in the nation. There's about just a little under 800,000 people that live here. It stretches from the city line to the beaches in the south to some areas of Hicksville and all the way up to pretty much Old Country Road, like the Mineola area. So it's a huge area.
Yep,
and it's
bigger than Boston, population-wise.
Yeah, it's tremendous. We have 1,200 miles of roadway. We have one of the biggest park systems, at least in the eastern region, with over 100 parks that we maintain. Obviously, we have miles of beaches. We have museums. We have a cemetery. We have one of the busiest building departments around. There's a lot that goes on. We have a conservation and waterways department that many people move to Long Island because they love the water and they love fishing, they love boating, and they don't realize that all those buoys that keep us safe each and every year are put out by Town of Hempstead CSEA workforce. They are GPS and pinpointed in the perfect position so that when you're out there on your boat, you can keep you and your family safe. Mm. So our departments range, from so many things. Recently we just completed a dredging. We have our own dredging team in the Town of Hempstead. We completed a dredging project to make our waterways safer in Sea Dog Creek. And just, you see it all the time, whether it's repaving roadways, whether it's doing work on the water, whether it's just the everyday making sure that, refuse and garbage and recycling is picked up, to those who plow our streets. It is a huge operation, almost $500 million budget. So it's a huge undertaking that goes on every day. And really, your town government does so much. I mean, and we talked about this, I think, before we went on air, but, I pride myself in making my office as accessible as possible, whether it is bringing my office out to the community, a couple times a year. I bring a mobile town hall right into the communities that I represent. So that saves, someone taking that trip to Hempstead to visit us. I also try to make, as you guys know, very accessible on social media so I can answer people's questions, meet their concerns, and let them know what's going on in the town, because we offer so many programs for all ages. And like I mentioned, the town of Hempstead is such a diverse place. I mean, even in my district, my district is probably one of the most diverse. If you go where I represent a majority of the 5 towns, which is probably the biggest Orthodox population around. And then in the north end of my district, we have the seat of the Rockefeller Diocese. So coming from a kid who graduated Chaminade High School and worked in Brownsville, Brooklyn as a detective, I've definitely learned a lot becoming a councilman, and I think it's a great learning experience because it really broadens your horizon and it really makes you respect what this town is fundamentally built on.
Yeah, well,
I bet definitely. When it comes to exactly,
native immigrants.
Services, this is true, and different experiences and different kind of circumstances. But it's certainly, like I said, an important thing. I think when we speak to legislators who come from different kind of backgrounds professionally before getting into public service, which, again, you could say it's an extension of your other public service. But that said, I'm sure, again, the constituents, acknowledge, and that's how we get, good government, by having more community input. But speaking on what you did mention there, the budget, because that's one of the things that, for anyone, for any level of government, one of the most important things legislators do besides making laws and helping, with the town or the, kind of municipality function, are to pass a budget. And I know it looks like Supervisor Clavin, he had submitted, and it looks like, am I correct, is it still going to be voted on, but a $256 million spending plan? I know there's a lot of tax cuts and programs and, services that are included in that, obviously, package. So can you tell listeners, where that stands and what we should expect with that?
Sure. So just before I guess we do get into 22, I just want to recap 21 and 20, where the town board in a bipartisan fashion was able to put forth actually a tax cut budget. So although people get their tax bills and they probably don't see the change, they should realize that in the town of Hempstead, the last 2 years, their taxes have actually been cut. And services have been not. And now in the 22 budget that Supervisor Clavin proposed, and I'm confident that will be supported by the town board, there's another tax cut slashing just a little over 9% from the town's general fund, and we'll be reducing the overall tax levy from 253, I think, 0.1 million, which was in 2021, to 250.6 million. So figure it's about a $3 to $4 million cut. We also we're hoping to gain revenue in the form of mortgage recording revenue, sales tax, and some other revenues. And we're still dealing, obviously with the unavoidable expenses that we're stuck with, which are health insurance and other things. But, we're really making sure, I was always told, you kind of try to leave things better than the way you found them. You try to do more with less, and you try to run government like it's a business. And I think that's exactly what we've been doing. We try to give and bring the taxpayers of the town of Hempstead the best value. We provide, although there's so many different municipalities, and you can be in a community and, there's roadways and you're not sure. It could be one of 3 municipalities that actually handle the roads. So there are a lot of layers of government, but I think what they need to realize is that we provide a lion's share of the local services, with the exception of police protection and public education. We're the ones that are picking up the garbage. We're the ones that are plowing your streets. We're the ones that are paving your roads. And, the town of Hempstead comprises just about 8 cents of every one of your dollars that you pay for taxes. So, and for those who live in villages, which in my district is a lot, it's even less than 1 cent for every dollar.
Yeah.
Interesting. So let's remind our listeners that they are listening to this week's Long Island News here on 90.3 WHPC with Councilman D'Esposito from the town of Hempstead, who, again, is representing the 4th district over there. So, okay, so that makes sense. I know that's one of the big things I know you talk about, and a lot of people say, again, we want to make government run like a business. obviously there's a question on, return of investment usually when it comes to your taxpayer dollars. For what services do you get? So that's always been the hard conversation. People talk about austerity and, trimming the fat, but people need those services. And I know, and we'll get into it in a little while, that you but that the town announced that they were going to give a little bit more funding, I believe, to Long Island Cares, to fight food insecurity, which we see as, still an ever-present issue. Obviously, things like the opioid crisis, that we still need the funding for these types of programs, garbage and everything else people kind of take for granted. But it's sometimes, not that easy to do and stay kind of in the black. But to that point, how does the CARES funding kind of play into this? I know this has, been a kind of conversation, not just for this town, but for, every government. We talked to the Congressman Swazi, and obviously they're focused on trying to get more money for the infrastructure and for, the other kind of reconciliation bills, to keep government funded. But we know that definitely played a part in hopefully not cutting services. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, we have not cut any services in the town of Hempstead. And I think that, the town was given that CARES funding based on our population. And even as recent as October 2nd, we renamed our plaza in honor of senior councilwoman Dorothy Gooseby. And, our Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer was there, who is obviously sits on the other side of the aisle as the majority of the town board. And he even mentioned, when he gave his remarks, he said that, he was a very important part of getting that money to the town. He's trying to get the town more money. And he actually said, I knew Dorothy and Don Clavin and everybody in the town of Hempstead would spend it well. $133 million to directly help the people. And, that's exactly, how we looked at it, is that, the $133 million that came from the Federal CARES Act was designed, voted on, and distributed for the use of those people that live in the town of Hempstead. And that was our goal. I mean, we provided, I think, close to $5 million to hospitals, including Mount Sinai, Mercy, North Shore LIJ, and Valley Stream, the medical center. I mean, we provided testing both with Northwell Health and Mount Sinai South Nassau. I think we did over $4 million to Northwell Health. We also did a $500,000 grant to Mount Sinai South Nassau to create a drive-through COVID-19 rapid testing, which was really needed to get people back to work and to get our economy going. We had put together, which I'm sure you guys have heard about, the first, at least in New York State, I think it was second in the nation to Connecticut, a mobile Vaxmobile, which we did with a partnership with Mount Sinai South Nassau. That was about a $700,000 purchase. And to date, we've provided over 7,000 vaccines through the Vaxmobile, which has gone to every corner. I mean, it's not been in one area. It's been in, Senior Councilwoman Gooseby's area. It's been in the Orthodox community. It's been in Rockville Center. It's been everywhere. And it's even been in some parts of the immediate vicinity, like the city of Long Beach, because there are people who utilize the schools and work there that are town of Hempstead residents. Yeah. We were able to provide $13.5 million to schools and colleges. We gave money to every one of the school districts in the town of Hempstead, including Nassau-Boces. You mentioned food banks. Even as recently as a couple of days ago, we added more funding to provide meals. I mean, we've given $3 million to Island Harvest, $1 million to the Mary Brennan Inn, $2.5 million to Long Island Cares, $75,000 to the Marion and Aaron Girl JCC in Cedarhurst, $50,000 to Nassau Community College's Nest, for total over $6 million. We've provided over $800,000 to local villages for unbudgeted COVID expenses. Something near and dear to my heart, the local fire departments. We've distributed close to $500,000 to them. And other community organizations, United Cerebral Palsy, the United Way, Cradle of Aviation, Long Island's Children's Museum. There's just been a lot of good work, and even to get our businesses booming. I mean, one of our biggest concerns was, our main streets, our downtowns. We didn't want places shuttered, so we provided over $3 million in PPE kits to businesses just to keep them. It was an unneeded expense that they had when extra money wasn't flowing, and this was the things that were going to keep them, their customers, their employees, and their doors open.
All right.
Yeah, no, we hear you, and that's something that we've obviously spoken with the town, obviously,
yes,
with Clavin and obviously Kate Murray, who both, obviously have a long history in government, but, especially speaking to Kate Murray, having been, kind of the county executive and, or been the same position yes, there we go. The town supervisor, knowing that there's those connections to those institutions, whether it be the inn, whether it be, like you said, United Way, who's doing the good work on the ground and who really is, getting that return on investment for, folks in the areas, that need to be serviced. So that's certainly, again, an important list.
You know what took me, it made me stop in my tracks when I guess looking at the proposed budget, $250 million. And I had to look again because everything these days is in billions. All the numbers we see, it's a billion this, a billion for that. When $250 million to run a town at the size of Hempstead, I was smiling actually. I mean, it didn't equate right away in my head because everything else is billions.
Must have been a typo.
Yeah. I had to look there.
Thankfully not.
Yeah, and just to listen to you, list all of the entities that you've got to deal with and you have to help with funding and stuff. I'd say you guys are doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, listen, we're trying our best, and obviously there's in any business, whether it's government, whether it is the law enforcement. Obviously, you always have critics, but I really think, and I say this all the time. And I did an interview yesterday for the upcoming election. And my grandfather passed away a couple of years ago. He was 96 years old. He was a World War II veteran. Probably the hardest working guy that I know. And he always told all of us, you try to leave whatever you touch, you try to leave it better than the way you found it.
Yeah.
I really believe that, that's at least what I try to do each and every day. It may not make everyone happy. Regardless, you're going to have those critics. But
amen to that.
Yeah.
Yep. You're in an arena where
and you lay your head on your pillow at night. I think that's what it's all about.
Well, there is. You're in an arena that somebody's going to be unhappy. It's just and that's kind of sad. But although at times those are those are the things that tell you that we need to pay a little more attention to this thing. It might.
Yeah, it's all feedback, like I said, positive and negative. It's all informative, like you said, in one way or the other. And obviously things that are off basis, that would be seen by folks, who have the information in front of them. But moving on to your point, like you just raised there, I'm always trying to make the community better and leave it better than before. We wanted to really speak definitely about the Narcan trainings that you have been really kind of spearheading. I know you've done them in a lot of different settings. It seems like just like with the Vax Mobile, willing to travel basically. And, it really is something that we talked about with the police commissioner and obviously the county executive and other folks about, not losing sight of the opioid epidemic, obviously throughout the COVID pandemic. So can you talk about that whole program and, what is going forward with it and, why it's so important?
Sure. So I guess if you go back to the day that I was appointed to the town board, I was appointed in 2016. I ran in a special election in 2016 for a 1-year term, and then ran again in 2017 for a 4-year term. So I guess coming off the police department where I worked in a pretty violent community, and just everything that I've kind of seen and heard and learned from being in the fire service, obviously the opioid epidemic was something that's facing the town of Hempstead. Whether people want to take it head on or they want to kind of bury their heads in the sand, it's something that we're dealing with. And I really asked the question, that we have the largest town in America. Is there anything that we're doing? And I don't think it was that we were ignoring it. It was just that it wasn't something that kind of was at the forefront. So I was able to apply for a grant working with Dr. Dave, and we received a grant. And since probably about January of 2017, probably 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. Obviously, we took a little break during COVID, but 3-4 nights a week, we're out there doing these Narcan seminars. Last night I was in Franklin Square. The night before I was in Rockville Center. I believe next week I'll be in Merrick on Tuesday and Cedarhurst on Wednesday. So it's a lot. I mean, we're out there, we're doing it, and we're teaching a lot of people good things. We're providing everyone with the basic that they need: how to identify an overdose, how to administer Narcan, and everybody leaves with their own opioid overdose kit, including Narcan. So
that's great.
I think last night after we finished our class in Franklin Square, we're just at about 8,700 kits that I've distributed with the help of my colleagues since 2017. So my goal that I set is 10,000 by December 31st. So we're doing it. I mean, throughout the summer, I sometimes when I woke up, I wondered why, but it was early mornings, and on Saturdays and Sundays, we were doing Town Park Point lookouts, so people who came to enjoy the beach, they could come a few minutes earlier and get trained in Narcan.
That's incredible. That's great. You're saving lives. That's the bottom line. You're saving lives.
The multiplier effect, knowing, obviously all the problems that we've seen, either personally or, with people from the community, of course, who've gone through, having family members with opioid, kind of substance abuse issues and addictions, that really makes a difference. And it's really amazing just to see, in relatively a short time, how much, that's kind of been something that's so widely accepted and so widely available, where, obviously, like you said before, I think some people wanted to just put their heads in the sand and say, well, it's their own fault or, something like that. Why should we? But now knowing that both law enforcement, obviously emergency medical personnel, but just anyone can, kind of get, these trainings and, go to maybe like their CVS and, get potentially even, Narcan to distribute, if they know how to do it in a safe way for family members or loved ones who are struggling with this issue. That certainly is like I said, very, very valuable, as Bill was saying there. So that's great. And certainly we hope to see that 10,000 mark, kind of accomplished. I assume it won't be done at the beach like it was during the summer.
Unless we have weather like this for the next 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, right. So that'd be a whole nother problem, but fair enough. So that's great. And obviously in a little while, we'll just ask, for your social media so people can follow up where they can find out more about that. Is there also a website for that program, or is that just mostly? So for the Narcan, you could visit the Town of Hempstead website. It has all the dates, upcoming dates. You could also visit my social media. My Facebook page is Councilman Anthony D'Esposito. My Twitter and Instagram handles are at Anthony, Anthony, Despo, Despo. All the information's on there. And obviously, I'll give out my office number in case anybody has any questions about the upcoming classes. It's 516-812-3242. Great information. We'll obviously repost that as well, and keep an eye on all those trainings to make sure our listeners know that that's an available resource, free again of charge for folks looking to try to help the community in that way. So we only got a few minutes left here, obviously, with you, council member, but we did want to just touch quickly, on an issue that I know that's close to your heart, which is I've seen you posting in terms of combating, both law enforcement officer suicide, and also trying to support veterans as they come home, back to the town from service overseas. So I wanted to hear about that, but I did, I know we only got a few minutes, but if you could also just touch on the idea of how that's balanced. And I know, like you said, some of the criticism, in your opinion, might be, too harsh and obviously problematic and could, lead to some of these concerns. But how that's balanced with calls that, from your constituents for police reform. How do you get that conversation to cool down so that we can hopefully have, better outcomes for everyone, of course, with, personal, life, kind of at the main issue.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with the first question first, and I'll try to move as quick as possible. So the town of Hempstead has a great Veterans Affairs program that we assist veterans, whether they are, newly, home from deployment or they've been home after serving our country for years. That, again, you could call my office and we'll connect you with our Veterans Affairs Department. They work closely with a lot of different entities to really bring resources that those that have served our country need. So that's super important. The issue with law enforcement and suicide, listen, it's unfortunate. We've seen it not only here, but we've seen it across the nation. And it's one of those things where I could attest that as someone who's worn the uniform, you kind of always try to keep that stoic face. You try to pretend that nothing bothers you, but you see things and smell things and have things said to you that many people will never realize even happen. Yeah. Some of the things that law enforcement witness on a daily basis are things that I don't think our brains or our eyes were created to see. Mm-hmm. So that's a
lot of trauma.
Yeah, and it takes a toll. And I think that we're grateful to have. I know there's a group that I work with, and I know Commissioner Ryder works closely with them, and they are Beyond the Badge New York. They are two members of law enforcement who are a couple who came together And they do great work. They provide not only funding to raise awareness, but they do their best to break that stigma that, you know what, if you're a member of law enforcement, you don't always have to have, you don't always have to wear everything inside. You can let it out. There's people to talk to, and sometimes that can help save a life. And they also provide scholarships for those that have the children of those who have been lost to suicide. And then when it comes to the police reform, I think it's as simple as this. I think that in any profession, there are bad people. There are bad, there's bad cops, there's bad lawyers, there's bad politicians, there's bad doctors, there's a lot of people. I think for the most part, most police officers every day go to work, suit up to go out there and follow out the oath that they took to protect and serve and to keep people safe and to fight criminals and take to protect victims, and that's what they do. I think that this has become a very politically motivated issue, and I think what needs to come down to is that there needs to be more respect on both sides. I think that we need to understand that the police need to be respected, and that they can't. It's not always. It's a tough job. It's often very violent. And there are steps that need to be taken in order to keep us safe. And there are investigations that are done that need to be completed. And all that information is not always shared with everyone. But what it comes down to is that, police are in uniform and they need to be respected, and there needs to be a mutual respect community. And I think that we've seen that. I think Commissioner Ryder in Nassau County has done a tremendous job bridging, that gap. And I think that, here in at least my district, the fourth precinct does a great job working with community. They're always at all my opioid trainings. The first precinct, same thing. So there is a community partnership there. But what it comes down to is there's a lot of this rhetoric that's being spewed, whether it's, and I don't want to get into politics, but there's a lot of rhetoric that's being spewed, whether it's from New York State or, even as far as Washington. And it is on both sides, but we need to realize that police are not bad. And, I've been a very vocal, and it's not that I'm hiding behind it. I think that the criminal justice reform that was passed in New York State has without a doubt handcuffed the police. And we've created do I think it was meant to do this? Probably not, but nonetheless, this is where we're at. And it's created a revolving door justice system where people have given up on even getting justice. There's people that I know that own stores that no longer call the cops for people shoplifting because they call the cops, nothing happens, and the next day the person is back in stealing just under the threshold so that they can, if they are caught, could be released again. Yeah, well, that's not the community that we want to create.
Yeah, part of the thing is, I was just listening to a major news story, and there's some lady came out with I guess she wrote a book, and it's basically about the war on truth. That we're having a problem with that. And sadly, some of the reason for that is trickling down from the top. It's not, we have seen, you always see the bad side, and I don't want to necessarily, harp on that. But how do you feel about outside oversight of the police department? Because, personally, I've seen internal compliance in so many places, and there seems to be a lot of activity that's falling through the cracks. We're all been exposed to the videotapes that countermand what some law enforcement officers have attested to in court, and then we go and see the video and say, well, that doesn't look like that's what happened. People need to trust the police. You're right, and I think that, we need to, Commissioner Ryder, he's been here a couple of times, and one of the things we both agree on, and we shake our heads every time we say it, is that cooler heads need to prevail. I think there is an issue there, and it does need fixing.
Yeah, no, listen, I think that statement is absolutely correct, that cooler heads do need to prevail, and I'm not, I don't want to say that I'm completely against other oversight, because I'm not. I think that we're in a world, and I do believe that a lot of police departments already have that in place. Mm-hmm. I know the Police Department does. than many police departments do. But I also, we need to realize that the oversight can't be from politically appointed people
exactly.
there to set an agenda.
And that's why cooler heads prevail is the thing that needs to really be remembered. Not politics. It's not about politics. And as soon as that happens, that's got to be put down.
Right.
We got to look at the
better
issue.
outcomes, like
Yeah.
you said, would come from impartial and objective kind of analysis, and people really just trying to move together to make communities better for everyone. Like you said, obviously the community as a whole, but also for law enforcement. Considering some of the things you mentioned with the trauma that they see, making sure that they have the resources, especially for mental health. I know the same thing I've heard for fire departments, and obviously vets. Making sure they get those services to hopefully have a better. More healthy, again, dynamic and relationship between, like I said, all parties involved.
Yeah,
so,
but
all right, I know it's a long conversation.
We can't thank you enough. Yeah, we can't thank you enough for coming out.
Of course.
We definitely want to speak to you again.
We'll carry it on another time.
But you're doing some great work. You really have. We could talk for another hour and a half about the things that are going on in the town and some of the work you've done. But hey, keep up the good work. Really,
absolutely. Hopefully, next time I'll see you guys in the studio.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be great.
Look forward to it. So, take care till then. Have a good rest of the weekend. And, of course,
yes, you too. And thank you so much.
Let's go now to our next guest, who we're happy to be joined by, of course, which is Newsday's reporter and staff writer, Candice Ferrette. Again, from Newsday, covers a lot of Long Island politics stories, and is going to thankfully discuss some of the more recent news and let our listeners know what's going on here in the county. So thank you, Candice. Thank you for joining us. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
There she is.
Happy to have you on. I know it's a busy time in the county in terms of politics, kind of that last mad dash to the finish line here. All the legislators are up, obviously, in the counties, and a lot of, this excitement, some would say, others would say, discussion, I guess, just about the positions of the new DA to be filled and the comptroller at the county level. So we're happy to have you on. But I guess we wanted to start first with your most recent story, I believe, which kind of lays out what ultimately came of Nassau County Executive Curran's proposal for $375 payments to county residents being approved by the county's legislature.
Right.
Yeah. So Monday, I covered an emergency legislature meeting in which the Republican majority. I'm so sorry, by the way, if you hear drilling.
It's okay.
That's okay.
Yep. My office, they're doing the ceiling work too, so I know the pain. Don't worry about it.
It's a new normal.
It doesn't usually start this early, but I apologize.
Maybe there's a story there to be written.
Oh yeah, you can tell. I can talk about my assessment for the project. But anyway, so so the majority, there was one abstention, but it passed 18-1 to send direct payments to Nassau County households who earn $168,900. Just by using their tax returns, they can apply for that. And then anyone over that and up to $500,000 would have to use their tax returns and show some kind of documentation that they suffered a pandemic hardship. And the county is using this, using federal money that they got through the American Rescue Plan that President Biden approved in March. And it will cost about $100 million and go to about 400,000 households.
Okay, so
again, that was the thing that shocked me. The $375 amounts, so each individual. I mean, a lot of people are saying, "Oh, that's change," but it amounts to $100 million.
Yeah, and what was the total fund? Because I know it was only I think it was under 200 million that pool that they were drawing from. I don't have it right in front of me, but
so the county got its first tranche this year, and it was 193 million that they received in May from the American Rescue Plan. Next year they will get 192 million from that federal.
Okay.
So there was a lot of debate. I mean. Laura Curran's idea first emerged in, I believe, May, when they got their first disbursement of the money. And there were questions about whether or not it adhered to U.S. Treasury guidelines.
Okay.
So that was something that they were very worried about. I think that at first was going to go to STAR recipients, but then they found that cut out a lot of renters who might have been suffering from pandemic financial hardships. So they wound up expanding the eligibility so that there wouldn't be, according to their outside attorneys, any legal questions about excluding certain groups.
Right.
Interesting.
I'd be curious if I was, let's say, I'm making $500,000 and I want to put in for my $375. What kind of proof do I have to show them?
Good question. So you would upload your 2020 tax return to the county portal, and the county has actually hired an independent vendor to review these claims. But it would be household income, so it wouldn't just be you as an individual making up to that amount. It would be you and maybe your partner or wife or whatever. And it would be. You would fill out a questionnaire about what your hardship is. It could be as simple as, having to hire an extra babysitter because your kids were out of school. Okay. Or it could be that your entire business tanked. It's just really varies.
Very broad then.
It's very broad. Or you've missed a mortgage payment or a utility bill or something along those lines. But it doesn't sound like it's overly difficult to prove a pandemic hardship. And this was something that Democratic Minority Leader Kavan Abraham said, pretty much if you're living here last year, you were pretty much touched in some way by the pandemic. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, you would think so.
I couldn't catch a train. I couldn't get a car. Whatever.
Something. But my question is: so it's not a self-attestation form then, like the hardship declaration was at the state level. This is still something that you submit, and then you have to prove some kind of incident, or is that kind of basically what it is? More self-attestation.
I don't think an isolated incident, but you do have to just show some kind of hardship if you're making above the $169,800.
Right. Oh, okay, above only. Okay, I just wanted to make sure then. Yeah. So anyone under
that would just get the money based on their tax return. All you have to show is that you are in that income bracket. Anyone who is already in the social services system actually doesn't have to take any action. That would include, seniors and veterans, those who are getting any kind of assistance like SNAP or
Medicaid.
Medicaid. They're already in the system, and they estimate about 100,000 people fall into that category, or households fall into that category, and they'll just get their payment. They'll probably be the first ones to get the check.
Understood. That makes plenty of sense. Thank you for that clarification. And in terms of this proposal, I know there was a lot of, we'll say, discussion, pretty heated at times, especially from the Republican majority, kind of raising some of the points that Bill had, kind of laid out as arguments, about this not being really as much as, most taxpayers would like to see. But nonetheless, even with that Republican majority, I'm correct that only one Republican legislator actually voted against it. I think it was a legislator Koppel, I believe, from Lawrence.
Yes.
Is that?
Yeah, it was Howard Koppel, I think. Correct pronunciation. And he's from the Five Towns area. He represents Lawrence. He felt, he gave a pretty big speech when he voted against it, but he thought it was ill-designed. He didn't seem to have faith in the county government to dispense the funds adequately. He and some other legislators still had questions about how they would verify tax returns. A lot of the nitty-gritty stuff that they sort of voted on blind faith that the county executive and her administration would be able to handle it. He also, made a point that others echoed, was that, there are going to be some people who could have been helped more if the funds were transferred into something else. or transferred into a pot where they would eliminate like fees, for example, which would be like an ongoing savings for taxpayers.
Okay, understood.
Something along those lines. So they just are fearful that money will get into the hands of the people who don't really need it, and not enough money will go out to those who do.
I see. Understood. But nonetheless, maybe because, again, it is political season. I know, as was, I think, laid out in the article, that, it's kind of tough still, though, to go and vote against money going into, constituents' pockets, regardless of how imperfect the plan you may think it is. So I understand that, it's one thing to say something, it's another thing to vote for something.
Well, every time we hear something, we have to figure out whether or not this is a true concern or whether we're talking about politics.
Yeah, well, there's always going to be interplay there. But okay, so fair enough.
If you're the lone vote, it's going to pass no matter what.
Yeah, it's a safe vote.
Yeah. However, if it's important to you in an election year and to your constituents that you vote on principle, then that might be a very good calculated move. I don't know.
Right.
No, right. That is definitely the political calculus.
Well, it's one way to get ink. It's one way to get ink. Be the standout.
Yeah, that's true too.
Whatever that is.
Okay. So fair enough. So to that point, and obviously, the County Executive Curran, along with, I imagine, the Democratic members and, even the Republicans who, somewhat begrudgingly voted for it, would say that the idea, like you said, is to help, stimulate the local economy, put money back in the pocket of residents, and hope that, again, it does, have that good feedback loop and help local businesses, which have obviously struggled throughout the last, year and a half plus throughout the pandemic. But let's segue now towards some of the other stories. And let's remind our listeners, they are listening to this week's Long Island News here on 90.3 WHPC with Bill McIntyre, myself, Jon Gallo, and thankfully joined again by Newsday reporter Candice Ferrette. So in terms of the other big races that people are watching that I know that you've reported on, one of them is this the district attorney's race that the current state senator from the Long Beach area, Todd Kaminsky, is facing an opponent, I believe Donnelly from the Oyster Bay region. Can you tell us where that stands? I know it's been pretty heated, and I know it's kind of been focused a lot on, as it makes sense, kind of law enforcement and stuff like that kind of concern. So can you just encapsulate where that kind of is at the moment, going to the finish line?
Sure. And I will say, in a move of shameless self-promotion, I have a story coming out this weekend on this race.
Please do.
Okay. Yes, law enforcement. I mean, it's the DA's race, so it's who is going to make you feel safer. And even though I think the discussion around bail reform has not been a discussion for a little while, it is the issue that is most talked about right now with regards to this race. And that makes a lot of sense because that office has to implement some of the changes that the state made in 2019 and then amended in 2020, right? They millions of dollars, Nassau County DA's office, Suffolk DA's office, really like every county and municipality across the state had to change a lot of the ways that they did things, hire different people or more people in a lot of cases, and increase technology to comply with some of the laws. But the issue that Republicans are making the most out of is cashless bail. And Ann Donnelly right now has the endorsements from all of Nassau County's unions. So the PBA, the SOA, COBA, and the detectives union.
All the law enforcement unions.
Every law enforcement union is behind her. Correct.
Understood.
In Nassau County. Todd Kaminsky has the state troopers supporting him and the Long Beach police. Long Beach PBA. Donnelly's been a 32-year prosecutor in the DA's office. Kaminsky will say and has said in press conferences that he doesn't have a lot of faith in her prosecuting crimes of public corruption as a Republican. And she has her campaign has framed Kaminsky as one of the authors of the bail reform bill in 2019. and is seeking to sort of make him align him with the more progressive wing of the Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is evident in the mailings. I'm sure that plenty of our listeners have been getting in the commercials they're seeing. Yeah. Like I said, trying to wrap, Democrats with, the city brand of kind of progressives, from their view, radicals, especially around this bail reform issue. But I know Senator Kaminsky, I guess, still now, I know in running, I guess he's been trying to hammer some I don't know, personal corruption or some other types of allegations out there too. Have you, in your reporting, is there credibility to those claims, or can you tell us any more about that with the other candidate, Donnelly?
Well,
has that been verified yet, or is that
Senator Kaminsky last week held a press conference in which he presented an email exchange between Ann Donnelly and her husband regarding Republican politics, basically, which she used. And she used it on her DA's email. So he's pointing to that as evidence of her being sort of, for lack of a better term, shill for the Republicans, and not, having the integrity that it would take to be the independent prosecutor that you need to be when you get into that office. I mean, even though, they're all running on political parties, the law is the law. And and that's something that you're supposed to check at the door when you become district attorney, right?
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. No, that's
so his argument is that she's not going to be able to do that because she gets all this money from the NASA GOP and is very heavily involved in Republican politics. I don't know how much truth there is to that claim. Yes, there is the money factor there, but as somebody who works in the DA's office, I mean, she hasn't really been visible as far as I know in Republican politics over the last few years. I mean, I've been on this beat probably going on 5 years now. And I can't say that she's really been out there as a real politician at all. I've rarely seen her at all.
No, the name, and I get the, her kind of proposed, bona fides, kind of coming from the office internally. But like you said, as a political candidate, again, if you haven't heard of her and, other folks who monitor it pretty closely do, I wonder, like I said, how much that kind of, again, impacts that accusation or allegations, by the opposing candidates, because it is that time of the year. So that's why just trying to see if there was any, real fire to that smoke, that kind of has been confirmed versus, it just being, again, a month away from the election and, people being able to, lay these kind of political attacks, based on things that, do have maybe some shred of truth, but, obviously have more context, I'm sure, involved. But okay.
I can talk about Laura Curran.
Yeah. Where does it stand, that race? What do people need to know and how do they find out more, I guess?
Hempstead Town Councilman Bruce Blakeman is really a perennial political figure. He's been around for a really long time and has run for various public offices, including being I think he was the first presiding officer of the
legislature
when it became a legislature. Mm-hmm. I'd have to double check myself on that, but I'm pretty sure that he was the first.
Believe so. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so he's been around for a really long time. Obviously has a lot of the institutional knowledge of Republican politics. Laura Curran, as you know, when she was first elected, was pretty much a fresh face. Mm-hmm. But at this point, I think she is running on a platform where she's shepherded us through 100-year crises, really, a pandemic, and was out in front every day, trying to be the calm sort of voice, and also someone who is an advocate for small businesses and really challenged the state on a lot of the reopening. She also, has advocated for mask mandates to be decided by individual school districts. And she borrowed a lot of, they borrowed a lot of money, the administration, they refinanced the debt that they have with NYFA. Right. So she's ending with a lot of money in her administration's coffers. And she also has a lot of a lot of money for her campaign. So,
should be interesting.
She's out there a lot. Yeah. People like her, it seems, as a person. But depending on what side you are on the reassessment issue, it's an issue for you. And in Nassau County, the tax issue is like the issue.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Bread and butter. That's an evergreen one. And certainly we know that that's something that we can discuss, forever. And we probably will going forward in other shows, hopefully with you as well. But there's a lot there. And, like I said, it's just important that people know, what's going on, obviously, and follow this race because it obviously is going to impact their future.
We've had Laura Curran with us on the show in studio and on Zoom and, all different kinds of ways. And, she's always been very forthcoming with any questions we have and explaining things. But I do agree. I think that reassessment is going to be the burr in the saddle, so to speak.
I think that is Brickman's big platform. Your taxes have gone up, and Newsday's reporting has shown that a fair percentage of property tax bills have risen and will continue to rise due to the reassessment. And the reason for the reassessment is a complete other debate, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But all he needs to be able to show is your taxes went up because of this. Right.
Exactly. Right. Regardless of when it started the reassessment process or anything else, it's the trapped in a moment situation. But like you said, she's been walking a political tightrope too, being kind of different than the city brand of Democrat, but still wanted to have enough of that kind of, we'll say liberal or progressive kind of, ideology there to keep some of the voters happy, but knowing that it's Nassau County, it's not over the border into the city. So,
Candice,
thank you again.
We thank you for joining us, really, and spending some time. We have to definitely get you back on.
Okay,
but
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Most definitely.
Thank you.
So we encourage everyone, as always, to make sure that they subscribe to Newsday and read obviously Candice's stories Ferrette, there, and obviously, you can also follow her on social media. I know on Twitter at her name, Candice Ferrette. So we certainly encourage you to do that as well. So thank you so much again. We really appreciate your time and all the information for our listeners.
And
thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you.
Have a great long weekend.
The clock on the wall says it's time for this week's Long Island News to move on out of here. We thank you for joining us. Remind you can catch this week's Long Island News every Friday at 3 o'clock right here on 90.3 WHPC.